Okay, I'm here for part two. I already started it once and then I looked down, like I didn't look at my time and it was like really long and I was like, well, that's not gonna let me post it. So I have to redo it. Um, I tried to do a video response to my other video, but there was no like option to do a video response. So I'm just gonna put the link for the first video down in the bottom, in the description. You don't have to watch it. It doesn't like tie into it at all. Really, I mean, it kind of does and it kind of doesn't. So if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to. Um, so we get to Germany um, early January, right after Christmas. Um, it wasn't as different as I thought it was going to be. I guess I was expecting something like the difference between the U.S. and Japan. It's just absolutely different. But it wasn't. The people looked like me. I had blonde hair, blue eyes, and most of them had blonde hair, blue eyes. And, they spoke a little bit differently, and everything looked a little bit older than what they did in the U.S. But for the most part, it was all right. But um, sorry. Um, the differences were not in the Germans and Germany. Germany and the Germans were incredible. It was a great place. The difference were the Americans there. So we get there. We're not in base housing right away. The base was set up a lot differently. It would kind of confused me at first. Um, like most bases, even in in Ramstein, like everything's on one base. And in the United States, like the base is one contained community. It's like a city and a world all of its own. They have their own schools. They have their own, grocery store, their own gas stations, fire department, police department, um, everything. Bowling alleys, restaurants. Everything is, on there, and you don't need to leave. But in Berlin, it was a little bit different. The Germans had a base there already, and so after World War II, when Germany was split into sectors, the Americans got that base, and it basically was an airstrip, and like a base thing. Uh, yeah, I mean, it was small. It was much smaller than what I was used to. But like the commissary, like the shopping center was in one area. So the commissary, there was a Burger King, a pizza parlor, a video rental place, the BX, like all that was in one area. Um, and then there was another administrative area, like when we needed to get new IDs, stuff like that, that was there. Um, so, um, yeah, like it was different. So the first day that we were there, like I didn't have school or anything yet. They were still on holiday. So we just went around to these different things. My dad had, of course, he had to report to the commanders and, you know, um, he had to do a bunch of paperwork and stuff. So we just kind of went from base to base and that kind of thing. I do remember our first day there, right outside the shopping, like, area, the shopping base, there was this bratwurst stand, and the most amazing bratwurst I've ever eaten in my life came from a little, probably 3 by, I don't know, I'd say 5, maybe, little stand on the corner of the road. It was awesome. It was like Germany, seriously, the brats here, they're not brats. Okay. Yeah, so that was like the best brat ever. And then afterwards, on our little shopping base, we had a Baskin Ramen, so we went and got ice cream, even though it was snowing, and my ice cream didn't melt. I remember thinking, like, I'm holding my ice cream, I'm not eating it, and it's not melting. It was like so strange. Um, but eventually, we did get put on in housing, and um, the housing, it wasn't a base housing. We lived on the economy, which means we lived in a German neighborhood. Um, we didn't have a house. We lived in an apartment complex. Um, and in Berlin, there were two military branches in Berlin. The Air Force, which was the main, like they were the biggest branch out there, and then the Army. And because my job's dad was extra. Um, he was an extra staffer because basically my dad's job was to help with the reunification of East and West Berlin and turning over the base to Germans because the Americans were closing the base. After reunification, they didn't feel that there needed to be an American presence anymore, and that the base in Ramstein was going to be good enough. And so my dad was brought in to help with the reunification. So he was an extra, and they didn't have housing for us in the Air Force housing section of Germany, yeah, of Berlin. So we got put in army housing, and I had only been around my entire life. I had only been around Air Force brats, and we're like as Air Force brats, we were just like our parents, and just like the Air Force in general. We're very laid back. Like, don't take it so seriously, And so, granted, kids would tease, but all kids tease, right? All kids pick on you for, being different, looking different, that sort of thing. But nobody was mean about it. It was just kind of like, me getting made fun of for wanting to be an astronaut, Like, what? You want to be an astronaut? Like, that is so weird. But nobody was really hurtful about it. It wasn't like, I never saw kids get beat up, ever. Um, but um, the army brats where I was living, I don't know if they had something to prove. If they thought because they were their dads were in the army, they were better than everyone else. I don't know. But the kids were definitely different, and it was difficult to make friends, and I never really did. I was one of only two um, Air Force kids in the entire complex, and it was difficult. And Yeah, it was strange. Like, I had a park across the street. Okay, so my building, let's see, there were a bunch of buildings in the complex. I guess the military had basically just leased out an entire apartment complex in Berlin. And there were like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 buildings, maybe. Yeah, 7. Yeah, there were like 7 buildings in the complex. It was like 5 stories high or something. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4 across. Um, but yeah, and there were bars on the windows. I thought that was odd. But in front of my building, there was a park, a little park, like a mini park, and then in the back of our building, there was like a bigger park. And then in the far back of the complex, there was another like, I guess it was more like it was a little bit of a park. It had a few slides and stuff, but it was like major like open spaces. A lot of the dads would get together and play football or throw a ball or whatever. Then there was another like little mini park on another side. There were parks everywhere. Um, and my bus stop was in front of our building. And this was like the first time I'd ever really truly experienced life outside of a military base. There were skinheads, neo-Nazis, bullet holes in my bus stop, and a nudist park in front of my bus stop across the street. Actually, it was a playground on one side and a nudist park on the other. So I guess German parents would drop their kids off at the park and then go and nude sunbathe right next door. My parents never allowed me over there, even though I really wanted to go because they had a zip line, but I was never allowed to go. My parents were like, no, you can't handle that. So my time's up on this one. I will make a part 3 now. So, all right.